Hey everybody, Blake Crosby here. For those that don't know me, I'm CEO of Crosby Hops. The team asked me to put together a little video. They thought it'd be fun to do it from the field, which I agree. As hop farmers, we're pretty into going out into the field, and today's a beautiful day in Oregon. We're in the Willamette Valley. Our farm's in Woodburn, which is right between Portland and Salem, basically. For those driving by, we're actually not too far off the interstate in Woodburn, so feel free to stop by if you're ever in the area. However, the point of today is really to talk about state of the industry. I'm actually in a Centennial yard here today, which is really beautiful, if you can see behind me. Centennial is a variety that we grow a lot of here at Crosby. It's obviously a core variety for the craft brewing industry. Many of you know Centennial had a tough year last year with some early bloom due to some excessive early heat in the area, in the region. Both Yakima and Oregon were impacted, and yields were down 25-30% in many cases. The good news is this year we see a really wonderful Centennial crop coming on. We're just starting to get into bloom in Centennial, actually full bloom. It's an earlier variety, and a little bit of coning starting to happen. But point today isn't to talk so much about Centennial as it is to talk about state of the industry. And with that, I'm really just kind of free flow here, pretty informal. I think right now in the craft brewing world, we're continuing to see challenges with a lot of customers finding it difficult to grow their businesses, trying to adapt to what seems to be quickly changing consumer tastes and demands. And I feel like we talk about these things over and over again, and maybe we don't know what it actually means. I think from what we can tell, there's certainly a lot of excitement around craft beer still. And there's also changing demographics. There's Gen Z, which continues to be a question mark for all of us, I think, in terms of, how are their behaviors going to evolve over the longer run or longer term or even the intermediate term. I think there's post-COVID stuff that we continue to wonder about and talk about, with just what habits have permanently changed, if any, post-COVID. I think there's an argument that some have, for sure, as it relates to socialization, going out, and how that impacts consumption of things like craft beer and others. Obviously, the alcohol thing, non-alcoholic thing, as it relates to health and wellness. I think a lot of millennials that are aging are starting to think more about that stuff, and we're starting to see that show up in the market as well. I know there's a lot of debate as to whether or not non-alcoholic becomes a real factor in the market, but at this point, I think it's fair to say that it has the potential to. So that's also a plus, actually, for the hop industry as we think about beer, which, fun fact, beer is the number one non-alcoholic beverage in the traditional alcohol space, making up, I think, about 90% or so. Heard that stat recently, of non-alcoholic beverages actually are the beer category. So beer does have a pretty amazing opportunity, and by way of beer, hops as well. So that's something we're watching. I think as we look more kind of at the hop industry itself, there's a lot of confusion right now, a lot of uncertainty. Contracting rates continue to be pretty low, and that's creating a lot of challenges for not only suppliers, but ultimately growers on the ground level. We're a grower and a supplier, so we can relate to both of those things. But I think ultimately the challenge for us is just not having clear signals from the market. And that's a challenge across the hop industry. As I talk to my peers in Oregon and in Yakima and in Idaho, historically, the hop industry has been able to manage by way of hop contracts, historically also with more industrial or large brewers that had probably better visibility and predictability into which brands they're brewing on any given year, and there wasn't as much of a dynamic growth perhaps, but also probably wasn't the short brand life cycles that we see in craft now. So I think one key takeaway is contracting has changed, and it probably needs to continue to evolve for the craft brewer. I think this idea that everything goes to the spot market certainly isn't the answer, but there's probably some sort of hybrid model for certain customers and certain segments of craft that makes sense. So that's something we're monitoring and watching and looking at how we integrate into our business. And I know others have already taken some steps there to see what other flexible options can exist in terms of that. I think it's hard because we're in an industry that is constrained by Mother Nature, that we get one crop a year. It's right now, by and large, goes largely into only beer, and it makes it pretty volatile and also risky. So in the hop industry, you're taking a lot of risk, putting all your investment into one crop that by and large goes into one thing, and in this case, beer. And when that one thing is doing well, that's great. And when it's not doing well, that can be more challenging. Or frankly, in the hop industry, what ends up being more of a challenge is really supply. And when supply just gets a little bit out of whack, we can see it show up in pricing and competitiveness in the marketplace pretty quickly. And it's already a low margin business, and when you add that additional pressure of oversupply on margin and pricing coming down rapidly as a result, it quickly puts a squeeze on a lot of operations. So it's no secret, there's a hop merchant in Oregon that recently is in the process, it seems, of exiting. I've had to file Chapter 11. There's probably other reasons that go into that as well, but the market is certainly part of it. I know, just talking to my peers in the industry, there's a lot of stress. And that's probably not showing up entirely on the surface yet. But I think there's a lot of operations that are, grateful if they're breaking even right now. And I think there's many, if not most, that are probably having a hard time even doing that. So this isn't necessarily unusual. This is part of the cycle. It's just the hop industry hasn't gone through this cycle in quite a while. And we were on such an expansion trajectory that I think it was easy to forget that this is also part of a cycle, is correction, and nothing goes up forever. So we're in that part of the cycle, and I think certainly it's possible that not all the same people that went into it end up coming out, and I think that's pretty understandable. The interesting thing in hops, though, is there's only about 75 families that grow all the U.S. hops that get distributed around the world. And as everyone knows, U.S. hops are really the most coveted hops globally right now, especially for the aroma and flavors that we're breeding and cultivating here in the Pacific Northwest. I think it's undeniable to say that these varieties and the growers and innovators here in the PNW have been a huge contributor to driving the success of craft beer and creating flavors and aromas that excite customers and continue to do so. Whether that's West Coast IPA, to cold IPA, to of course hazy and juicy IPAs, which continue to be really popular. A lot of that, if not all of it, really started in these hop yards. So of course brewers and their creativity and artistry is huge as well. But from a hop perspective, which we're talking about today, I think it's really important to remember that. And here we are in a downward trajectory in an industry that's shed over 20,000 aroma acres or so in the last couple of years. Creates a lot of stress, and it's probably pretty safe to say it's one of the largest declines in acreage, probably in percentage and also actual acreage terms, the hop industry has seen in its history. And so we're in uncharted territory, and on top of that, we obviously have some demand challenges with the beer industry and the craft beer industry specifically, facing its own headwinds. So as they all say, we are in this together, and I think it's on all of us as hop industry members and as our customers in the brewing industry to continue to work collaboratively. And I think right now I'm sensing that it's a little harder in some cases because brewers are feeling stress, hop industry people are feeling stress. I think it's not surprising when there's stress, then things that used to feel easy feel hard, and things that used to feel hard feel even harder or impossible. So I think I'm definitely picking up on that right now in the industry as well. So I think it's a good reminder for all of us to continue to connect and communicate and know that all of our businesses are going through challenges. I've picked up a little bit of a sentiment from some in the brewing trade that the hop industry has been on an incredible run, and it's okay, they can deal with a few bad years. And while that's not totally untrue, I think it lacks a lot of lacks a lot. That statement lacks a lot because the hop industry has been on an incredible run, and that's fair to say. The caveat is all the profits, and then some debt in addition to the profits went back into the industry. If you look at the data and even just go walk around the P&W hop industry, you'll see it firsthand. There's incredible investment that was made. So all those earnings from the last, say 5 to 7, 10 years, plus a lot of debt on top of that went into this hop industry to get it to keep up and grow and expand with the pace that craft beer was expanding. So I think it's incredible what the hop industry has achieved in that regard. And I think it's important that we all remember that hops are, again, one crop that go into basically one product, so they're incredibly risky. And when you put huge investments into an industry like hops, there's a tremendous amount of inflexibility. When you put up a hop facility, you can't just take it down and sell it when the market slows down, or divest very easily without taking significant losses, especially when the market's down. And so farmers, merchants, processors, they're all experiencing this. Their cash is all tied up in their businesses. They're experiencing lots of expenses as a result of the expansion. So I'm sure most brewers can relate to this in terms of depreciation. I think for most of the farms and operators that expanded in the last 10 years, depreciation is probably one of their largest expenses right now. And when they're not able to fully utilize their capacity, it gets even more expensive and puts a tremendous amount of pressure on margin. And then you have falling prices, which, hop prices have probably come down 20 to 30% easily. And in many cases below the cost of production in recent time. And of course that probably has to happen. If things don't come down below cost of production, acres tend to stay in, and we know acres need to come out. So I think it's necessary pain. That sound is actually the drag strip. There's a drag strip close to our farm. If you heard that engine sound, there's a drag strip about a half mile away. But anyway, I think this pain is necessary because acres need to come out. We're farmers, so I can say this, but farmers need to probably feel that pain, or else they're not going to take the acres out, because farmers, we like to farm. We like to grow. We like to expand. It's kind of how we do things, especially in the U.S. hop industry. So I don't think it's all bad that, some of these prices have pushed things below cost of production. I know some people squeak about that a little bit and say, well, that doesn't make sense. And they're right, it doesn't make sense. But it also doesn't make sense to have too many acres. And if pricing stays above the cost of production, acreage is just simply not going to come out at the level we need it to. So in the short term, we all have to feel that pain. I've had some brewers tell me, well, you should be able to go this low because so-and-so is able to go that low. And I think it's important there's nuance in those comments, because I don't think anyone in the hop industry is able to go that low. I think right now they're willing to go that low because the alternative is even worse. But we're certainly on a path that's not sustainable for multiple years, for that matter. So it'll be interesting to see. 2024 feels like it continues to be sluggish, frankly. For the hop industry and movements and shipments and contract bookings. And I don't think I'm saying anything that anyone doesn't already know that's in the trade on the merchant side, but that's kind of what we're seeing right now. 2025 is even a bigger unknown. I think the industry, there's that drag strip. The industry is going into 2025 with probably its lowest contract bookings in a very, very long time. So there's a tremendous amount of anxiety, I think, that many dealers, of course, and especially growers have. And depending on how brewers are able to show up and, how much overages they've worked through of hops and how their sales are going in 2025 for the crop coming up in 25 will determine whether even more acres come out or not. Right now, I'm skeptical, honestly, of 25. My sense is, just in talking to some larger customers that may still not be in the market in a meaningful way, that it's possible we see hop acreage go down again in 2025. We're pretty sure even in 24, current acreage is going to be below current demand. So we're starting to dig a hole, which is making an impact in the surplus. And again, if that happens in 25, or if acreage even goes down a little bit more, that will accelerate how quickly we get through the surplus, which is, at Hop Convention, they projected the surplus to be about 30 to 35 million pounds, which is about a third of a crop year. which doesn't sound like much, but the caveat is there's high concentrations of certain popular varieties in that 35 million pounds. So it could be several years of inventory for certain popular aroma varieties. So that's why we've seen such dramatic cuts that probably seem really crazy when you look at the data in certain varieties. But just because that 35 million pounds is really concentrated in a few really popular varieties, Citra, Mosaic, I mean, that's no secret, and a few others. So I think the question is, of course, obviously beer demand plays into this, but I think what really drives how quickly the hop industry restabilizes is how quickly acreage continues to decline, or how much we under deliver versus, annual demand, which again, for the first time in a probably long time, crop 24 is probably going to deliver under what actual demand is, on a pounds basis as it relates to annual shipments. So that's good for getting back to stabilization. And 25 will certainly probably be similar, or potentially even a little bit more cuts. We're just continuing to have a lot of customers not be able to give us much guidance. And I think it's easy sometimes in the hop industry to get frustrated with that, but I understand for customers, they just don't know either. And things are so dynamic, and they change so quickly, and an IPA brand can be thriving for 180 days and then it totally falls off. I get it. So I think that's why my comment earlier about how we contract probably has to evolve, is becoming more clear as we go through this challenging period. So with all that said, that's a little bit of the state of the industry. It's not meant to sound negative. I think we have a tremendous amount to be grateful for as an industry. We still have a lot of good things going for us. The craft industry is tremendously beneficial to the hop industry and continues to be a stabilizing force that we never had, say, in those cycles 15, 20, 30 years ago. So I do think the hop industry is in a healthier place than it's been then. I think also a number of the varieties that are being pulled back in acreage are varieties that are proprietary varieties, and those corrections, because of that, it's probably happened a little faster than if it was a surplus of public hops, which historically has been more the case in the hop industry. But now with proprietary varieties making up majority of the acreage, those brand owners and managers are going to quickly right size the crop with demand. So we have to imagine that's going to happen, and it's probably going to happen quicker than ever before, which is why we've seen such a dramatic acreage reduction. Again, a historical acreage reduction, expansion, but also in turn reduction. So I think that's something to be aware of if you're a brewer, is this thing may correct itself a little quicker. If you've been around these cycles before, this one may correct itself a little quicker than previous ones, largely because the variety mix is so well managed now by the owners of these varieties. So of course there's debate around that. There's probably pros and cons that we could talk about another day. But in general, I think that can bring a lot more stabilization to the hop industry, which ultimately does help the brewing industry. Right now, if you're a hop buyer, it's a great time to be a hop buyer. I think the challenge, though, is most brewers are long on hops, so they're probably not able to take advantage of some of the lower pricing in the current market. But I do believe we're probably close to a bottom in some sense of pricing. We're already below cost of production in most cases, and I don't see that going much lower, or the need for it to go much lower to get the necessary outcomes of acreage and volume reduction. So I think hop growers are in for another challenging year, more than likely in 25. 25 in some ways could be a bit of a bottom, because I think even in 24, a lot of growers and merchants still have some legacy contracts they're shipping against with brewers. I think again in 25 things really fall off, and contracting rates are low, and that's for everyone. So I've made the rounds. I've talked to the key players in the industry, and everyone's saying the same thing. Like, everyone's book's pretty open for 25. So depending on how much that book fills will determine whether or not more acres come out. My current prediction is I think it's quite possible a few more acres come out, but we'll know more. We'll know more in the spring. I think, again, from a kind of a commercial side, what we're seeing is a lot of new products coming out in the hop industry. I think it's becoming really challenging for brewers to wrap their heads around this. I think we kind of joke about the magic potions, and that's not meant to be disparaging at all. I think a lot of these products have merit, but I think the challenge for these products is not being a flash in the pan, and I think most of them will be. And I think it's going to be interesting to see which ones can really cut through, if any. Thinking mainly like the downstream products, the hop oils that many dealers have now, and continue to iterate with brand extensions and new names and new attributes and new technologies. It's clearly overwhelming the brewing industry, and I hate to say it, but I think in some cases it's almost becoming a little bit comical. And I don't say that again to disparage anyone, because I think we're all contributing to this, but I think for brewers it's kind of becoming a little bit comical of just like, oh, of course, another new product, and next week another new product, and this week another new variety, and another new product and a new variety, or another new variety exclusively in this new product with this new technology from this company. So I think that's something the hop industry needs to be aware of. I'm not saying that we're on the wrong path here. I think a lot of these products, there's a place for them. I do wonder, though, which ones are actually going to stick. And I was thinking about innovation, and I don't think innovation is releasing new products. I think anyone can release new products. I think an innovation is really which companies and which products are going to make a paradigm shift in the industry. And frankly, I haven't seen one that has done that yet. We were talking about this as a team. When I say yet, I'm talking recently, but I would say YCH's cryo hops back in, I think they released that in 2017. I think that did make a paradigm shift. I think that actually kind of started this path towards efficiency, and now it's accelerated the downstream oils and flowables and, again, magic potions, for lack of a better term, that promise the world and don't always deliver that. But I think it's interesting, and it'll be interesting to see if one of those downstream products can be a paradigm shifting product. They're all claiming they have the potential to be. I've talked to a lot of brewers that I know and trust, and most of them are pretty skeptical and still say that they're not able to get the same level of quality of beer without a considerable amount of pellets, whether that's T90 or concentrated like our CGX or cryo from YCH, and others that are out there. So I don't know. I'm here to keep an open mind. We're certainly very open to downstream products. I think we're just kind of sitting and waiting to let the dust settle before we engage, because I can't really tell if there's traction there. I know there's a lot of releases. I know brewers will try anything once, maybe twice. I know everyone's excited to put out a positive review online or on Instagram or X or LinkedIn, and it feels like that buzz often fades a few months later, and then there's another release, and you kind of do the hype cycle again. I know we're in an era of hype cycle, so it's not just the hop and brewing industries, but I wonder about that. So I guess my question is, true innovation, if I'm defining it as real innovation, is anything that makes a paradigm shift, kind of changes the consciousness of the industry. When and what will that be in the hop industry? Is it a downstream product? Maybe. I would argue that it certainly was the case with concentrated pellets, cryogenically processed, which YCH started that and led that back in 2017, and now we've continued that with CGX. I do see that continuing to evolve. I see that continuing to grow. To me, that feels like a natural in-between spot. I think some brewers have a hard time making that leap all the way from a natural product like T90 or even the few that are still using whole hops all the way to downstream. I think that's a massive leap, kind of this idea of hops in a lab, ultra processed. I do wonder, when an industry like craft, how far that can resonate in terms of market share. I think a product that's still very close to its natural state, like a concentrated pellet, that's my current sense, is that's probably where more of the market share continues to evolve to. But I could be wrong. Certainly not a knock on downstream products. I find them very fascinating. I love trying beers with them, and again, we're very open-minded to pursuing those as well if we need to as a company. But right now, again, we're kind of just watching and waiting and letting the others duke it out a bit and see what cream rises to the top, and hopefully learn from others' mistakes before we engage with that part of the business. Right now, it's also really small. It's probably less than 5% of market share, if that. I think that's even generous based on the BA data. So a little bit of state of the industry. Overall, I think, we're in this for the long haul, like most in the PNW. I do worry that we're going to see some attrition. However, and I think the hop industry comes out of this more concentrated than it did going in. Some people would argue that's good. Some people would argue that's not always in the favor of the brewer. Regardless, that's probably the reality, and it's really no individual's fault. It's a very classic market, kind of cycle and phenomenon. I think on that note, one thing that we talk about a lot is just the next generation. I think in most industries, there's just not a strong next generation. Maybe strong's not the right word. I think there's a strong next generation, to put it differently, but there's not the numbers. And I think there's lots of things contributing to that, and we can go down that rabbit hole a different time, but we just simply don't have enough talented young people to fill all the positions in the industries across the world, but more specifically, in this case, in the hop industry, we're seeing the same thing. So I think out of this cycle comes, again, more concentration, bigger farms. There's already, very sizable farms in the hop industry in the PNW, but I think these farms are going to get even bigger. Concentrations are going to continue to rise, merger and acquisition. I think we're in that kind of season of the cycle of the hop industry. To some degree, maybe not to the degree we saw with craft several years ago, but I think we're in that part of the cycle. So I think as a hop industry grower, merchant, processor, or any of the above, you're just staying open-minded right now. Obviously, you're doing your best to weather the storm. I think most will get through it, of course. I think all the name brands we know and love in the hop world, I would think will be fine, even though they're definitely taking their licks right now and licking their wounds. I think we're all in that together a little bit, but I do wonder on the growing side, especially the independent hop grower, meaning the grower that's not directly affiliated with a merchant or not a part of a co-op. It could be a tough road over the next decade, especially with the rise of more like proprietary processing, proprietary varieties. It's pretty easy to get locked out of this market. That's even something we're very aware of with our business here in Oregon, and it's one of the reasons we continue to do what we can to innovate and stay relevant. But similar to what craft brewers go through, it's not easy. So we can appreciate the challenges that all that comes with. So I think overall, to summarize, which was a bit more long-winded than intended today, is the market is still challenging. The outlook is still uncertain. The strong players in the hop industry, which I think most came into this cycle strong, will continue to persevere and will get through this, although certainly with some bruises and scrapes and all those things on the other end. I think those that came into this at all compromised either don't come out of it on the other end or have to get really creative with collaborating with other partners, merger, acquisition type stuff, or selling their businesses altogether. I think that crop 25, there's a lot of uncertainty, even probably more so than crop 24 in terms of demand. We're going to go into that cycle with record low bookings as an industry, and depending on how much the industry fills the cup with contracts will determine if or not more acres come out. So a lot to be determined. And on the commercial side and the trade side, continue to see a lot of innovation around products, around brand. Everyone's doing their best to get creative. It's really an inspiring time to be part of the hop industry and see what our peers are doing. I think my word of caution is just, it's overwhelming, I think, right now for a lot of customers. And I think the new product releases, the new variety releases, and again, we're all playing a part in this, but I think it's something that right now is probably challenging for brewers and consumers to really kind of stay on top of. And I think we have to be careful we're not creating undue confusion. And I'm not sold on downstream products yet. Not opposed to them, certainly open-minded, certainly curious, but I haven't seen anything super compelling. And the people I know and trust in the industry on the brewing side, it's just been a real mixed bag of feedback. So I continue to think T90s are the bulk of the market. Concentrated pellets are right there at second. And there's a certain, early adopter, hyper curious craft brewer that's going to try anything and everything at least once or twice. And I think that's what we're seeing with a lot of these products right now. So again, time will tell. And if those products evolve, we'll certainly be part of the equation. But we're sitting back and just kind of observing for now. So with all that said, appreciate everyone listening. For those of you that didn't close out this video by now, I appreciate your time and look forward to seeing you around the industry sometime soon. And Jackie, my sister, will also be doing a similar video, but giving a crop update on the current harvest outlook for the PNW for 2024. All right, thanks.